Hey Matthias, welcome back.
It's a
I hope my
pleasure.
sound
Thanks
is
very much
better
for having
now.
me again.
Yeah. So you have been at the Sickle Bits the last week, I heard. So how was it? And do you have some
Yes.
hot news, hot stuff from London?
um, I'm still recovering, I have to say. It's been 5 days, very intense, very little sleep, lots of discussions. Um, I'm still. It's like you move into a parallel world for a week or so, and I'm still partially in that. I have to say,
Okay.
very good to after 2 years to actually be able to meet people again, have conversations, uh, get that conference vibe that we've all been missing, I guess, right? And obviously, for me in particular, it was so convenient because it was here in London, right? I didn't even have to worry about traveling. Yeah, very good. Um, Particularly since I actually met a few people who asked me specifically about PBI-tools. Uh,
Mm.
people I'd never met before, but who knew my name or who knew about the tool, or people who I had only ever communicated with, virtually. That was absolutely fantastic. I'm hoping there will be more and more of those events moving forward. There will be other conferences coming up. Incidentally, I'm going to travel to Germany for Data
Oh,
Grillen in early June. Managed to get a
David
ticket for
Grill?
that.
Isn't it Dutch? I always was thinking it was in the
No,
Netherlands.
it's Lingen,
Ah,
just north of
oh, okay.
Düsseldorf and Münster, basically.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm going there for 2 days. Never been, so looking forward to that. I hear it's quite relaxed and
Mm.
chilled, so it should be a good vibe. What have you? Did you hear
Yeah.
anything about SQL Bits from far away?
Mm. No, yes, I've seen a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I've seen a photo of Reed Heavens with you.
Yeah.
Actually, by accident, I'm not stalking you, but I have seen it. You were dressed up as a knight. So
Yeah.
it was a little bit like a convention, I think. You had some Chewbacca and besides you, and you were dressed like a knight. It was quite crazy.
Well, that was just to clarify. That was not my conference outfit. That was just that was just for the Friday night party, which is always fancy dress. Uh, Both Reed and I, um, we came unprepared, so we actually hopped in a cab Friday afternoon, went to a fancy dress store nearby, and just bought something. So it was very random and poorly planned. But to be honest, I've been to SQL Bits quite a few times before. This is the first time I actually made an effort in dressing up. So I'm sort of proud of that.
Okay. It was cool. So do you have some really wow key output of it, or was it just like the whole stuff, relaxing and meeting the people?
Well, relaxing is probably not the first word that would come to mind here. It was all, first of all, finally being back and having real
Mm.
people around you. But then, secondly, all those conversations around PBI tools. I met Michael, for instance, who gave a talk on Thursday
Okay.
featuring PBI tools. I'd never met him before. I didn't know he
Cool.
was going to do that. And
Mm.
that was pretty impressive. And we had quite a few conversations after that. Yeah, stuff
Nice.
like that. Looking forward to more.
Yeah. So now it's really becoming the big thing, the PBI tools. That's what we are here for. And I think we can start with the update.
Yeah,
I can bring it up, and for me, wow, it's Docker image is
indeed.
added.
Yes, so it wasn't just SQL Bits. We've also had a new PBI Tools release, um, which also is no longer beta. So the latest release, which came out Monday before SQL Bits, so basically a week ago, is now RC1, Release Candidate 1. So I'm moving swiftly to actually have a full 1.0 release fairly soon. And one of the things I wanted to cover today is the Docker image, which has been added. And that's definitely going to help enormously in terms of integrating pbi-tools into CI/CD pipelines, which I wanted to show just in terms of demo. And yeah, I'll just get started with that, if that's okay.
Yeah, feel free. So
I've got one project open. Let me start here. So if you've seen previous talks I've given, you will be aware of this Azure DevOps sample project which I set up, which actually has 4 different pbi-tools pipelines just to demonstrate different ways of automating deployments using pbi-tools. This is all public, by the way, so everything I'm looking at right now you can see as well. When I first set us up, there was no Docker image available. So what I had to do was to obviously bring the pbi-tools executable into the pipeline. And the initial setup was to actually have the exe as part of the repository. That was fine for the demo, and it's fine for setting it up once, but it's not very scalable, and it's not a very nice way to manage that. So now with the Docker image in place, it's going to be much easier to look at. So this example here, simple LFS, is one which I've converted already. And when we look at the merge request that's related to the switch, we can see remove the .tool subfolder, which basically contained a full copy of the executable, and everything else was just an update in the Azure Pipelines YAML file. And down here, we can see the changes. So first of all, I switched from a Windows image to a Ubuntu image. So the Docker image is just Linux. There's no Windows Docker image. There's no need for that. And then this is actually the crucial change here. Basically, the YAML file has a new property container, which references pbi-tools-core, which is the image name. It's hosted on GitHub. So GHCR is the GitHub container registry. And I'm using latest as the tag here. Latest will always be on the most recent full release. So it's basically a straightforward way of always staying up to date. And then the only things I had to change down here was basically the path, right? So basically previously tool pbi-tools was referenced as in a local folder, whereas now we've got an absolute path here, /app/pbi-tools. That's coming from the container. So this is something which you're always going to reference. Everything else is exactly the same because the tool has always been cross-platform. So it behaves on Windows in exactly the same way as it does on Linux. If we're looking at this in terms of how can I get started with the Docker image locally? And I appreciate, the Power BI audience is probably not one with lots and lots of experience around Docker, which is why I'm going to provide a few examples here. And it would be good in terms of feedback to hear, how much sort of tutorial and getting started people would like to see. I've created a list of some example Docker commands here. As usual, I'm using VS Code, and I can only heavily recommend to install the VS Code Docker extension, which sorry, which which actually helps in visualizing what's currently running. If I take this command here, and just copy that into my shell and run it. There we go. I've just created and run a Docker container, and in this particular case, I've actually run the pbi-tools Docker container. For some reason, I can't scroll up here, so I'm just going to do it once more so we can see the full output. There we go. So that's the full output. And so what am I doing here? I'm doing Docker run, which executes the container. Sorry. I'm giving the container a name, which is completely optional. I'm specifying RM, which means remove or delete the container when you're done running it. And then I'm specifying the image name, which again is the one on the GitHub registry. When you run that image without specifying anything else, without specifying a particular command, by default it will run pbi-tools info, which basically gives you some metadata information about your environment. So you can see, even though I'm on Windows right now, this actually executed on Linux, and specifically it executed on WSL2, which is what Docker desktop uses. We can also see the version and everything else. So that's that. If I use a slightly different command, this one here, I'm going to create a container, and IT, this one, actually makes it interactive. So that means I'm then going to stay inside the container, and now I can actually run commands on Bash, which I've launched as my start application here. So this now is a complete Linux-based OS, if you will. And we can also see down here in the VS Code Docker extension that under containers, this is currently running, this is currently showing as a running container. Now, the extension is fantastic because when you've got a container, you can actually see all your files which are in here, right? So for instance, pbi-tools actually happens to be installed here under app and pbi-tools. So if I go there and run this, the exact same thing happens in terms of output, and that's a very neat way of actually getting started with it. If I exit out of that, then the container disappears because I specified RM. Now, down here, I've got a slightly more comprehensive example, and this is actually using pbi-tools for deployments. So let me walk you through what I'm doing here. First of all, I'm referencing an environment file which contains environment settings, including my password. I'm then referencing a volume which maps a local folder into my container as a virtual file system there. I then call pbi-tools deploy. I'm referencing a folder which is actually in my Windows file system. And I'm running the deployment. I'm running the deployment profile called profile 1 in what if mode. So that basically runs the deployment without actually deploying anything. So and here we go. That's working perfectly. In the sense that this is what we expect to see when we run what if. So it's basically iterating through my folder. If I just go into Explorer, we can see that same folder is under X tutorials, deploy demo. So this is the one I'm talking about. There are two PBIX files in here, report 1, report 2. If I now rerun the same thing, dropping the what if, it's actually deploying it into my Power BI tenant. Here we go. So this is you running pbi-tools in a Docker container without even having to install anything apart from obviously Docker on your machine, and being able to see exactly what pbi-tools would be doing in a Linux environment, and presumably in a CI/CD container. Now, what does that look like in terms of putting it into Azure? The project I did show earlier is basically this one here, very straightforward. I no longer have to keep the executable as part of my repo. All I need to do is to reference the container here. Azure will then fetch it automatically. Obviously, I have to make sure that the VM image which runs the job is compatible. And so Ubuntu latest is always the preferred option here. Everything else is exactly the same. I also have an example in GitHub. Let's look at this here. That one. Same thing. I've got a GitHub Actions workflow file in here. For some reason, it's not loading. That's interesting. GitHub seems to have a problem. Didn't expect that. Let me just open up here. I've got the same project here. I don't know why GitHub won't load now. So this is an Azure, this is a GitHub Actions file. YAML syntax, very, very similar to Azure DevOps, just slight nuances which are different. And we're also specifying Ubuntu latest here. And then here we're specifying the container image. Everything else is the same. And yeah, so that's basically what it looks like in terms of the new container image. Quite interesting that this won't load. We actually seem to have oh, that one loads. Okay, very good. Took a little while. Okay, I don't know why it's not behaving right now. But we've already seen what I was going to show anyways. Any questions as far as Docker is concerned?
I don't see any questions, but I would, of course, ask myself because I'm a Docker noob. I know as exactly as much as I need to know as a user to use it sometimes. So for anyone who never has anything to Docker before, I would explain it. It's like a virtual computer you can pass as a file, and you can run Power BI tools on it, and other tools, of course. So just a noob explanation for Docker for some people, from the Power BI and citizen development community who never had anything to do with Docker. And quite impressive that you make it run now. So what was your major benefits in business to have this extension, to have the ability to run Power BI tools in a Docker?
the main use case really is deployment, and particularly being able to integrate PBI tools easily into Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions or even GitLab, which would be another of those common CI/CD environments. All you need to do for any given repo is two things. One, the PBI tools deployment manifest, which I've already covered in other talks. And then having the YAML file defining your build or deployment logic. And you don't have to worry about how would I make PBI tools available to GitHub or Azure or GitLab, right? Because that's all handled in literally one line of code like this one, where all you need to do is to actually specify this container. So this is about convenience. It's about scalability. It keeps your repositories much leaner because you don't have to put any executables in there. And it should also help in terms of actually providing those YAML files as templates where you literally copy paste when you want to set up a new project. That's really where I'm trying to get to moving forward.
Okay, so you really drive it to so big enterprise level. I think Microsoft never expected this to do with Power BI. So even the thing of running Linux and Power BI, it's so counterintuitive at the first place. But yeah, I understand why you're doing this because everything in Azure is mostly Linux. It's not Windows, even if it's Microsoft. I know this. So cool stuff. So, and you developed the Power BI tools also. So the initial idea was like to make your work easier, I think, in your company. So how many
Indeed.
people are co-developing the dashboards and reports? Just interesting.
I've got a team of about a dozen right now involved in Power BI and data. So it's not just dashboards; it's the whole infrastructure around it, right? ETL pipelines, databases, deployment, right? So yeah, that's really what was my personal driver, right? We're currently going through a sprint where we're basically automating all our deployments. So the stuff I'm showing right now is something which in parallel is being implemented and rolled out at my company. The next thing coming, just to give that.
I would have asked anyway. So
Okay. And that's also something I had various conversations about during SQL Bits. Currently, PBI tools deployments are limited to reports or PBIX files. The next thing coming is dataset deployments, basically being able to maintain a model in a repo and then use the exact same deployment approach. Having the logic specified in a declarative manifest, distinguishing different environments, and pretty much putting all of that into a CI/CD pipeline for models. Either targeting Power BI Premium, Power BI PPU, or Azure Analysis Services, basically wherever you've got an XMLA endpoint. Model deployment is not going to be available for Power BI Pro unless you put your model into a PBIX file and deploy that one into a Pro workspace. But that is very limited in terms of what you achieve there. So yeah, that's what's next in terms of deployments. And that's something which is quite imminent. So it's something I'm very actively working on
so
right now.
when you are actively working on anything, it's like the next weeks it will be there, I think. So it's from my experience with your development speed, as I know. Okay, so there are still no more questions,
No
but
more questions?
yeah.
Okay.
Do you have anything more to say? So otherwise, I would just
Well, I've got a second topic to cover as well, if that's okay. This is the Docker topic. I was going to speak about. Actually, I was going to speak about model deployment and how to integrate with Tabular Editor.
Okay, yeah. If it's okay, if it fits like in 10-15 minutes, we can do it.
Okay.
Otherwise, we can. Yeah.
I'll be very quick. So just coming back. If people haven't seen this yet, I've got this AdventureWorks 2020 pbi-x repo on GitHub that basically contains a complete demo model, which was taken from an official Microsoft example, and I've converted it to work nicely with pbi-tools. So I'm just going to use that one very quickly. I'm hoping that GitHub will behave better now, but we'll see. So if I clone this, yeah, that's definitely looking much better. So if I clone this, yeah, it's definitely not super fast, but I do have a backup just in case this one. Yeah, in fact, given that this is stuck at 16%, I'm going to use my backup, and we'll.
It's done.
Oh no, I think we're good now. All right. I don't. Everything else will be on my machine, so I no longer need internet access. So let's go into that project. If you go to the README file, you're going to see a line of code which you can literally copy paste like so. You can run, assuming pbi-tools is in your path, and just within seconds, this is going to create a pbit file for you, which you can open in Power BI Desktop, and it will then it will refresh automatically. So just to sort of set the context here, this is a example for a model in source control integrating with pbi-tools. Just need a second to pull Power BI Desktop to the right window. It's 1 second. You can never predict where Power BI Desktop will actually open. Sorry, it's right. So I've got it now. Just need to move it across. Here we go. Right. So that's it. It's refreshed. I've got data in here. The data is actually provided in CSV files. And so that's it. So very cool. I've got a fully fledged model. I could have checked out any arbitrary branch, and basically now I could continue to work on this in terms of changing the model. Now, one question which currently isn't quite clear is how could I actually use Tabular Editor to help here? So if I go back to my repo, so one problem we have right now is that the sources defining the model currently aren't compatible with Tabular Editor. This is something which is on my pipeline. I want to be able to be completely in sync with Tabular Editor so that any pbi-tools project can be opened in Tabular Editor and vice versa. For now, there are some differences. So I wanted to show what you can do about it. The command for that would be pbi-tools convert, which is something that came in a month ago in the previous release, the beta 8 release, and is actually extremely powerful. And what you can do here is you can say pbi-tools convert, then specify the pbi-x subfolder, and then I can say model serialization. I always like mistyping that. Raw. And I say model only, and also I say override. So the raw serialization mode basically puts the entire model definition into one single file. Basically, what we used to know as a BIM file. And if I don't specify an out path, it will convert it in place. So it will basically take this entire subtree and condense it all into one single database.json file. So if I run this now, it's just going to take a second. There we go. That's it. So now I've got one single file, which is basically a standard analysis services definition file, everything in the same file. And that is something which Tabular Editor can open very nicely. So this is the folder I'm working in right now. We can see there's only one file here. If I open that, I've got the entire model in place. I can now go in here and actually use whatever Tabular Editor is capable of. So for instance, I can go in here and I can put a count rows for customer as a new measure. If I then also format that, there we go. And then I call that one, here we go, number of customers. And there we go. Now I've added a measure here using Tabular Editor. If I click save, it's going to save it back to the database.json file. And now I can actually go backwards and convert it back into the original format, which will also mean that I'm going to see in terms of diffs very nicely just the one change I've made. And this one is pretty straightforward because all I need to do is to actually remove this guy here. There we go. And that's it. So now if I go back here, I can see my original structure is back in place. The database.json file is relatively small because it only has leftover bits in it. And if I look at the changes specifically, I've got my new measure here that didn't exist previously. I've got the measure metadata, which I don't have much of other than name. And the only other thing that's changed here is in sort of a side effect from the RC1 release. In order to fix one of the bugs which was reported, I had to actually change the way partitions are declared. And so this change wouldn't have happened if we hadn't just moved from beta A to RC1, if you will. We would normally just have seen this one. So I just wanted to demonstrate that because I never actually got around to documenting the convert feature, which is extremely powerful. This, converting it into a single file and then expanding it back into the standard format for source control is definitely one use case which you can use for now until I get around to actually adopting the full Tabular Editor format. Sorry. Yeah, that's what I wanted to show here. Any questions?
No more questions, but thank you a lot for this. So I actually haven't seen the convert feature before, and now we can really see how you close the loop there.
Yeah, just to prove that it's actually working. Sorry for interrupting you, but now that I've made offline changes to my sources, right, and not just using the code editor, but actually using Tabular Editor, let me go back and recompile it into a PBIT file. There we go, and let me show that, so this is just been created, right? And let me show that this actually works, and we now have the exact same model with the additional measure in it as well.
Mm,
Hopefully it loads a little
nice.
faster.
Are you in exchange with the tabular editor creators or?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay,
Yes.
so it's you're synchronizing your efforts, and yeah, and in the next version it will be even better, the integration, as you told me.
Right. So again, unfortunately, I can't show you how it's refreshing because it always gets stuck on a different screen. But I'm just going to drag it over now. Sorry. This is the one thing I don't like about demos. Power BI Desktop is just not very demo friendly. Because it takes ages to open, and it's right. So here we got it, and now I actually have number of customers, the measure I just created, and it does work. If I put it in here, if I put it in a matrix against country, for instance, there we go. We can see it's giving us a nice
Great.
output. So yeah, that's what I wanted to show in terms of converting.
Cool. Okay, so thanks a lot. So we've seen Docker in action with Power BI tools, and even better way of deploy it or make it available for DevOps and non-server environments. And now we've seen also a demo of Convert. Great stuff. So to close it up, I would make some advertisement, I think. And here, as you've seen, you should see this. It's the Berlin Power BI user group, and you will be there next week.
Yeah, looking
And
forward to it.
so next week on Thursday, you will show us the DevOps pipelines. It's even a little bit longer talk than now, and also Q&A, and you can just join. It's not only for people from Berlin because we're still online with the meetings, so just join and meet Matthias there. And today, later, so we're just going over to this. There is a introduction to Deneb. Deneb is you've already told about it in another talk. It's like a custom visual to create different visuals like Chaticulator with some code, and for me more structure, more logic. So I'm really looking forward to it because Deneb is something I always had in my backlog, but never really used besides some very quick demos. So I'm really looking forward to join now. So just go to the Berlin user group. And data grill, and then you have told me when it is. So I'm really looking forward to join if it will be possible.
I think it's 2nd and 3rd of June.
Oh, okay. It's not already online. So, but I will watch it. Data grilling group. I think it's also I've never been there, but lots of cool people are talking about it. And when you're even coming out from London, I think I should join too.
It's a short drive from Cologne, so no excuses.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, that's it, I think. So
no questions today?
no questions today.
Okay.
So either the people are already satisfied, or it's I don't know, maybe the wrong time slot, but we will continue with the
Of
updates,
course.
I think, because you're constantly working on the tools, and we are still waiting. There's thank you. Yes, just no questions, but a thank from Didier. Great. So thank you, Didier, for the appreciation. I think Matthias is, of course, working on it to make his life easier, but also the life of the community. And I'm already thinking it's so great how fast you develop the new releases, and yeah, I'm looking forward for the further steps.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure,
Yeah,
great opportunity. In one of the future talks, we're definitely going to be looking at model deployments using PBI tools.
yeah, great. So I'm looking forward for this, and yeah, see you at the Berlin meetup quite
Absolutely.
soon.
Yeah. 20 minutes from now. Looking forward to it.
See you there. Yeah,
Bye.
bye.